We're halfway through spring and there's a whole lot going on in my veggie garden. Some positive, some negative, and just a whole lot of change in general. I'd love to tell you all about it, and along the way, I'll give you a few tips as we go. So let's dig in. Over here, of course, are the main veggie beds, and we will get to those, but first, let's talk about a few different areas around the yard. So let's start with the worst looking part of the yard. This part of the yard, this abomination of a corner, was just lawn, but over the last couple months, the goal has been to turn this into what will eventually be what I'll call the pumpkin patch, but it's more so going to be the cucurbit patch. You may have remembered from my seed starting video, I started a fair few pumpkins and zucchinis and cucumbers. Since then, we had something that I haven't had the opportunity to talk about on the channel yet, were those severe winds that rolled through Victoria through early September.
Victorians have been warned to brace for more severe weather.
Dangerous winds up to 100 kilometres an hour.
And because of that, I had a fair few seedlings fail. Of everything that was going to go over here, I have one Jap pumpkin plant that is doing pretty well. The goal was to, by this point, have this whole area be fairly covered with nice thick pumpkin leaves to make sure that any grass that does manage to wiggle its way up through this layer of cardboard and compost and mulch wouldn't really have the sunlight to survive. Unfortunately, because it's so bare, the grass is really starting to come through heaps. And I'm eagerly awaiting all of my next lot of seedlings to come through so that I can transplant them into here and try and have those actually dominate this whole area. The big vision of the area is to have pumpkins over there, have runners coming this way, and then ending up with a cucumber trellis where cucumbers climb up over this. And that's like the full summer vision. We've had a few hiccups, but we've still got plenty of the time in the season that I think we can do that. We'll just have to, one, get some more soil over here, and then just do a whole bunch of hand pruning and weeding to pull out a lot of the rest of the grass that comes through. But I think it's really important to show that more often than not, your first crack at something in gardening is usually some sort of a failure. And then you just get to reload, learn from your mistakes, and go again. Not that there's too many mistakes, other than just don't have category 4 winds come through unexpected. Now we get to the first area that's one of the established gardens. It's in a bit of a phase of transition with a change of seasons. These are my raised beds that get about half shade, half sun each day. They're right up against the eastern side of the house. Front bed, this was mostly lettuce and some kale. That's completely done and has been pulled out. And I have replanted it with this is rocket that's coming through because we are hitting pizza season, and yes, I do like rocket on margaritas. And then in the other half of this little bed, this is just flat leaf parsley. That's starting to come through. They're just starting to get their true leaves. Next here is obviously the snow peas, starting to get really dry and are pretty much done for the season. At least these ones are. I've got some others that are still going. As you get into the warmer months and your snow peas die off, you will still get a whole lot of snow peas off them. It's genuinely shocking. The big key is to just keep pulling off the pods as much as they pop up. And it's shocking how much the plant can still produce them and bring them through. But then you do start to get these really funky ones where they'll only have 2 peas in them and they swell up super quick. Need to decide what to do with this next, and I'm leaning towards just doing sweet pea, the ornamental pea plant. Then next up, we just have a curly leaf kale plant. I really need to plant more of it. And then just some seedlings that I do use this area to help harden off seedlings that I'm transitioning from inside my seed starting mat because it only gets half sun before they make it over to the full seed area. And then behind here are the Purple King climbing beans. Might recall from my early spring seed starting video that I started a whole bunch of these. They germinated super well. They were going super well until those winds hit. Then because of that, I didn't want to transplant them out and a lot of them got pretty stunted. That's the half shaded area, but I will just mention behind me, this half dug out little garden bed has been a huge mission, both because it originally had a whole bunch of big ornamental plants that were a pain to get out. And now I'm halfway through pulling out a bunch of the rocks. And once I do so, the plan is to have this try and be the best possible herb bed that I can build. And then I'm really hoping that this is actually quite a nice entry point to the garden, because this is where I walk out of the house and then into the rest of the garden. Let's talk about these newer raised beds. These are my newest raised beds, and they have had some success and some challenges. Let's start with this one over here. This area is what I have dubbed Allium Alley because in order we have shallots, then white onions, then a whole bunch of spring onions. Behind me, you may notice a couple of silver beets that are growing super well. They're just incredible. What happened with these is over in the main beds, you'll see the area where I normally grow tomatoes, I have to start clearing out. I tried to transplant a couple of silver beets that I was willing to kill anyway. And I think it's safe to say they made it. They're just now pancake silver beets. But this is the first year, nearly my whole gardening life, where I have bed space that I'm not too sure what to do with. I normally have so much more that I want to grow than the bed space that I have available. So especially in this bed, I really want to put my capsicum plants in here. And then other than that, I'm not really sold on anything yet. So if you have any ideas, you let me know. But now let's talk about the issue that these beds are having. You might notice that this is not very nicely mulched, and there is a big divot of stuff taken out from over there. Up until yesterday was a whole bunch of rainbow carrot seedlings. And now it has been completely turned over by, I suspect, my cat Tilly, who I think is currently sleeping in my blueberry bed. And I suspect other people are going to have similar problems, and I solve it the same way every time. So I build these bed covers that I then cover up with bird net, which I obviously can just cover this with bird net, but I need to build one for over here. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do that right now. So I've heard you. One thing that I get asked in my comments all the time is how I build the garden covers to my bed. And I'm finally squeezing it into a video. The secret ingredient in this is this 19mm poly pipe from Bunnings that is made for agriculture. It's UV resistant and super sturdy for this application. Another thing that I get asked in my comments all the time is how I managed to get so much done between full-time and YouTube and being a dad and then actually looking after my own garden. Well, the secret ingredient to that is today's sponsor, which is Magic Mind. And I have had a whole bunch of video sponsor offers so far, and I have rejected most of them because I don't like them, I don't believe in the product. But when Magic Mind contacted me, their email was so flattering, and you could tell that they were genuine fans of the channel who genuinely believed in our mission here. The problem was, I had never tried their product, and they said, that's okay, we only want to sponsor people who genuinely love our product. We'll send you a no commitment free sample of it. A few days later, it got here, and I like it so much. And if you've never heard of it, Magic Mind is a mental performance shot. And honestly, for me, I don't notice a whole lot of an overt effect, except for in the afternoon and evening, that mental fog that would normally come just never comes with this. I just end up with such a clear mind after taking it. Now, just so you know, I am being fair dinkum. I will say it does taste pretty grassy. It tastes like juice with a very grassy aftertaste, but I really like the effect. For the frame of the bed coverings, you have two options. You can either just roughly guess how long it is, cut it, and then cut them all the same length as that. Or if you're like me and you have a 1.2 meter wide bed, then 180 centimeters is pretty spot on to get that nice semicircle shape. As far as the stakes go, you want to have them about 20 centimeters out of the soil and as far down as you can get. I use the 50 centimeter stakes, so I get about a foot in the ground and then 20 centimeters above. And by the way, I thought that I had invented this bed cover construction method until I told my farmer friend about it, and then he said, oh yeah, that's exactly what we all do. I invented the wheel 10,000 years too late, as it turns out. Now, what I do tend to find is I only ever leave the covers on for a couple weeks at a time to give whatever seedlings or whatever fruit that I want to come through, and then I'm ripping it off. I use clamps, or what I also just do a lot of is just use a spare brick or something to just weigh down the edges, and I'll put a couple around, and I've never had an issue. This survived those Category 3, Category 4 cyclone speed winds that Victoria had a couple weeks ago. It's genuinely astonishing how good of a job this super simple system does. So from one of the best looking parts of the yard to one of the most ugly at the moment, all of the pot plants that are on the go that you may notice has a barrier around, and you've probably noticed in the back of a few videos, there was also a bigger structure with rope going around it again. So I mentioned earlier over here, talking about the pumpkins, about failure. I noticed that a couple months ago, all of my citrus trees, before I had built this, just started dying. Just started looking like this front one here where all the leaves just shedded, and then this one where they start to go all small and the plant starts to look a bit brittle. And I was struggling to work out what was going on, like maybe they were getting too wet over winter, until I came out one day and watched my dog take a 1.5 litre whiz straight into one of the pots and realized, oh, that's why everything in a pot has started to die. So I've had to create a temporary little fenced off area, and I will soon need to relocate this throughout the yard so that I don't just have this big ugly thing here. But the stuff that is going in here, apart from the citrus and my Camellia sinensis, which if you only watch me on YouTube, the Camellia sinensis is the plant that tea comes from. Green tea and black tea and oolong all come from this one little shrub. That this right now, early to mid-spring, should be the time of year that I'm harvesting it for tea leaves. But all of the leaves fell off, and it was also next to all of the plants that were getting weed in. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out why I'm not enjoying homegrown tea at the moment. But other than that, stuff in here is actually going super well. Obviously, there's this massive chamomile plant that's in here that is probably due for a harvest. This is a normal pomegranate tree. This is the little dwarf one that you might have seen in previous videos. Another one from an old TikTok is all of my grapevines are starting to take off. Oh, and then I've got my hops are finally starting to actually grow, which is something that I've wanted to grow for so many years, and this is the first year that I'm actually doing it, and a whole bunch of time that will be destined for that herb garden. Of course, I do build most of my bird nets to keep my cats out, and you may notice that this quickly pulled together bird net has Tilly sleeping in it, so that is also an outstanding success. The first blueberries of the year are growing, and this whole thing is my blueberry bed because blueberries do require a different soil acidity. And I have purposely put 4 different varieties that fruit at different parts of the season so that I get about 5 total months of blueberries that are coming through. And this will be the first year that I get to properly harvest them. Last year was their first fruiting year, but you only get a couple 100 grams total across 4 plants in their first year. And then this year, I'll be looking at kilograms coming off. And finally, we're at the main garden beds. I say finally, hopefully there's going to be one more section of this video if there's enough light today, because I really want to plant my citrus trees and I would love to show you how to do it. Obviously the big tall centerpiece structure, the pea bucket being mostly snow peas, all starting to die off as well. This one's still getting heaps off. Again, once these are done, this is the one that's definitely getting planted out with sweet pea, the ornamental, which isn't really that well known in Australia, but it's this beautiful floral climbing plant. Over in this part, plenty of seedlings on the go, which is probably a good way to talk about. I've got a whole bunch of tomato seedlings that are at about the right size to finally get transplanted, which is why you may notice there is a whole bare patch back here that used to be full of brassicas. All of the broccolis got done. We've been pulling out the cabbages as we go. We've been doing everything forward. There was a whole bunch of silver beet here that had to come out. This whole back row is going to be tomatoes across the full length of the bed. It's exactly what I designed these beds to be, so that I always have this big row of tomatoes. And another seedling I've just started that I'm super excited about are these golden nugget pumpkins. I've never tried them before, but I think they look so cool. They're these little pumpkins that store super well so that you can kind of have just a Serbs 2 pumpkin around. Moving on to the beds themselves, the cabbage is all completely ready to come out. We've already pulled, I think, 3 out. We've given a couple away and we're nearly done 1. So I'm super impressed with how well these have come along. And then the rest of this here, of course, just garlic, growing that on. Over there, you will notice my first test tomato. This is something that I decided to do just because it is still a little bit chilly overnight, and I just wanted to make sure that my tomatoes would survive once transplanted. So I popped that in the bed about a week ago to see how it would go, and yeah, it's starting to track really well. It's starting to look really good, so that tells me it's probably time to transplant my others. Next, it's time to talk about a few victims of all of those wins that we got through. The first one for me is my little seed house. You might have noticed has suddenly become a lot bigger, and half of it's in different parts of this little part of the yard. And yeah, it's pretty done. It might look kind of okay and repairable on camera, but nearly every piece of wood on it has split somewhere. This door is only just hanging on. And it sucks because I've had this for ages and it was really good. Although I don't think I would buy this same one again. It was always pretty cheap. If you have a suggestion of what I should get for my seedlings instead of this, let me know, because I'm definitely in the market for something. So another big casualty of all the wins was this awesome big trellis that I had constructed. All got pulled over, and then the pea plants within a day or so had managed to grow in a way that they are essentially holding it down, so I couldn't just wrestle it back. And then they have grown in this incredible structure where it's the pea plants holding the trellis together. This is like the most productive snow pea area that I've ever had. And it's that annoying feeling that gardeners sometimes get where in an area where you try really hard, the plants grow poorly. And in an area where you just kind of let nature take over, it does incredible. And what's also amazing is that this is the one part of the yard where the pea plants haven't quite started dying off due to the heat yet. So maybe them all growing on top of each other are helping them keep a bit cool, but we're still getting as many snow peas as you can eat every single day. And then right next to those, I've got a little bit of a dilemma. All of these broad beans that have been growing since winter and have been growing super well, but haven't produced yet. And this is exactly where I want my tomatoes to go. And I'm half torn between, do I want the beans where they're just starting to form pods now? Or do I just pull them out in the next day or so and then just replace the whole thing with tomatoes? And I'm leaning towards tomatoes. Let me know what you would do. Nearly at the end. Over here, lettuce going super well, spring onions continuing to go on. These will start to go to flower really soon. Let a couple of them go just so I have the same thing happen again where the seeds just go everywhere and then next year I get a whole bunch of volunteers. I do have chives growing in between a lot of little places, and now that the temperatures have come up, they're doing super well, and these I will definitely let go to flower because I think they're pretty as hell. Now we have the last of our baby beetroots, which are probably ready to be harvested. Let's harvest them. How pretty are those? I'm definitely gonna plant some more of these straight away just because they're just so pretty having in the garden. And then the little baby beetroots you can grow basically anywhere. And they're delicious. Over to, okay, one of the ugliest parts of the yard. This is my compost area, but there are some fruit trees over here. Cut me some slack. This is my dwarf cherry tree and it is going super well. There's a couple of little cherries starting to form. That's a super positive story. Slightly negative story. One person who commented on my video jinxed me so hard with my peach tree. So this is my second year with a peach tree. I've previously just grown them in pots. This is the first one that I've had in the ground. And one single commented something along the lines of, I don't know why you would plant a peach tree. It'll only be a couple years and then it'll have curly leaf disease. And well, that's exactly what happened. We've got curly leaf disease at the moment, which if you don't know, it's a fungal infection. It's not terminal for the plant, but it does mean that anything that grows this year can't eat. And then next year, during winter, once it goes dormant, which we're currently 9 months away from, that's when you then need to spray it off with a copper spray to make sure to kill off all that fungus. And then you should have a peach tree again, which, I'm sorry, little peach tree. But speaking of fruit trees, this is by far the hardest work part of the yard. That a couple of days ago was completely covered in those white stones. We've managed to get some of them away. And then I've dug the holes. I had to do some more de-stumping, which I had to do 2 other de-stumpings over there that were pretty easy, maybe an hour each. This one was a full 2-day affair and it completely blunted my chainsaw, but I'm finally ready to chuck in some of my nice little citrus trees. So it's getting pretty dark. Maybe we'll do one on camera and I can give you the tips. Hey, my microphone died here and I didn't realize for a good 10 minutes. So here is your ultimate guide for planting citrus trees. You need to understand that there are 2 things that citrus trees really hate. The first one is competition. If you've ever planted a lemon tree in the middle of a lawn and then noticed that it grows pretty slow, well, this is why, because it just doesn't do that great of a job of sucking the nutrients out of the soil compared to other plants. Which is why you see these tree rounds be so commonly used for citrus trees. The other thing that citrus trees really hate is wet feet. Citrus really hates its roots sitting in standing water. And where this can really easily happen is in clay-heavy soils because clay retains moisture really well. The way that I'm going to solve this problem is by digging a significantly bigger hole than I need and then improving the whole area of soil around the plant. This will give it the best possible start to life after transplanting. The other great thing these tree rounds let us do is plant the tree a bit above the regular soil line, which will help keep it out of that standing water. Once in, backfill it full of soil. Just make sure to keep the graft point above the soil, and then apply a thick layer of mulch. Then water every day for a week, and then twice a week, and then once a week. Oh my God, I only just noticed that my mic pack had gone flat. So I have no idea how long I have been talking without the audio capturing. And I really hope it hasn't been like the whole video. My rhododendron this year has been so beautiful, but it's just coming out of bloom. And I was really hoping to get the spring update in where I could talk about it, but there's only a few flowers left. I'll put a couple shots of when it was fully in bloom. When this is in bloom, it's one of my favorite parts of the yard, but you only get it for about a month each year, and then it's just back to being a big green leafy bush. That's the end of the video. If you've liked it, please give it a green thumbs up. It really does help. You can check out Magic Mind in the description. Use code CulinaryGarden20 to get a discount. Consider hitting subscribe. Let me know that you love Aussie gardening content. Thank you so much to the Patreons. I'll put them here. If you want to help support the channel and Aussie gardening content, consider checking it out. Thank you all so much. I gotta go have dinner. I'll see you next time.